We're a unique church in that we're a mission church. Our purpose is to reach out specifically to, using biblical terms, the least, the lost, the lonely, the left out in our community. To that end, we serve those people in the community that are absolutely the most in need. About 80% of our worshiping congregation has been homeless before. We have a large segment of low-income people working or worshiping with us, being a part of our congregation, as well as some of the middle-income community worshiping with us and supporting us. We get tremendous amount of support from the other churches in the community who join with us in our many ministries. We have a food pantry that serves over 200 families every single week. We have a soup kitchen that makes serves 180 hot meals every single week. We have a clothing closet that gets about 300 to 350 visits every single week. And then, of course, we have the hypothermia shelter, a shelter to get out of the cold in the winter. And it operates for 4 months of the year. And over the course of a year, there's about 2,800 hypothermia bed nights. In 1 week, it's about 170 hypothermia bed nights. So it's very important as a lifeline to a lot of people in this community. We do a lot of things that look like a social service agency, but we emphasize we're a church. And we do these things out of our commitment to our faith and our commitment to Jesus Christ, who tells us that as we serve the least of these, we are serving Him. I don't need to go into the details of what happened on February 8th because I think everybody knows those details. I think one of the things that I want to say is that this kind of activity has got to stop. What happened here at Rising Hope needs to be the last time that happens here in our community or any community across the United States. It doesn't represent who we are. We are a nation of immigrants, and we are a nation who has welcomed people to our lands, and this welcoming, which you see on the Statue of Liberty, give me your hired, your huddled masses yearning to be free, is also reflected in the faith of the Christian church. When ICE swooped in on the people leaving here, this was an attack on our practice of our faith, our practice of our religion, because this is what our faith teaches us to do, to help those in need, without regard to their background, without regard to their immigrant status any more than regard to their political affiliation. We're here to serve humanity, because that's what God calls us to do. So with that, I have been really pleased for the response that many of our elected officials have been giving us in this issue. I especially appreciate Congressman Beyer and how he has been with us and supporting us in these efforts. He's a friend of Rising Hope. We've known each other for quite some time. And with that, I introduce Congressman Don Beyer.
Thank you very much. Well, it's an honor for me to be introduced by Kerry Kaine because he's been one of my heroes for a long, long time. You know, a pastor who could have some big wealthy church anywhere in the country. Instead, he has chosen to minister to those who most need attention, love, support, and building up. I also coached his daughter for many years in basketball. So.
I'm wondering if you were going to mention that.
Look, I'm so thrilled to be surrounded by so many wonderful people. And I want to start just by recognizing the elected officials who have been really heroic throughout this. Senator Adam Evan, Senator Scott Surable, Senator Barbara Favola is on her way. I know she's coming. Delegate Paul Krizek, I think Supervisor Dan Stork. The Vice Chair of the Arlington County Board, all the way from Arlington, Katie Crystal. Mayor Allison Silberg, the Mayor of the City of Alexandria. Faye Slotnick and Lavonda Graham Williams, who have been doing ACLU work week after week after week, intervening for them. Michelle LaRue from CASA, and Lenka Mendoza from the Dreamers Moms in Action. Thank all of you for being here. You know, we're here to represent so many people who couldn't be here today, to stand in solidarity with our immigrant communities throughout Northern Virginia and throughout America. We're here in honor of our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, whichever generation in our family had the courage to emigrate to the United States. The sheer grit, the courage, the patience it takes to uproot your lives and move to a different country, especially if that's a country that doesn't welcome you. And we're here to make sure that the remarkable, resilient, inimitable fabric of our nation of immigrants is not destroyed by the scorched earth tactics that have come out of this recent administration. You know, it's truly stunning and sad that we even have to utter these words in the 21st century. We should make no mistake about what our new President Trump is up to. The new policies of the Trump administration exist to incite fear. They exist to spread terror and misunderstanding and insecurity throughout the immigrant neighborhoods, to make them feel unwelcome, to make them flee. You know, we're nations of laws. And with Mr. Trump, we agree, we all want law and order. We all want peaceful neighborhoods where criminals are apprehended. But morality is deeper than law. Morality is the basis upon which law should be built. And tragically, the U.S. Congress has failed year after year after year to amend the law to keep it in sync with fundamental morality. We refuse to even have a conversation or pass a bill that would yield common sense, widely evolved and enforced immigration reform. So instead, we get morals that tell us we do not make our neighbors live in fear. Our morals tell us we do not need to arrest and deport the neighbors among us who came there once upon a time in order to work hard, humbly, and honestly for a better life. And our laws have to be read in the context of our morals. There's so many friends, neighbors, and colleagues who are part of the extraordinary immigrant experience in the United States. I'm fond of pointing out that the 6 U.S. Nobel Prize winners in 2016 were all born in a different country. They add culture to our nation: food, music, language, history, science, even apparel. They enrich our communities, they make our economy stronger. So we've got to push back on the culture of fear that the president is intentionally trying to create through his executive orders and with this ICE tactics. You know, we know they don't make our communities safer. I just had a meeting earlier this afternoon with the folks doing domestic violence in Arlington and Alexandria. And they said the number of telephone calls and walk-ins they're getting is down dramatically. As women and men are afraid to seek enforcement of protection orders, they're afraid to report crimes, their children are afraid to go to school. This culture of fear is affecting law enforcement in very major ways. We're making our communities less safe rather than more so. Well, that's why we're all here today, and I'm standing here with some wonderful people. Let me see, oh my goodness. So, before I do that, I'm working with Suzanne Bonamici, who's a member of Congress from Portland, Gwen Moore, a member of Congress from Wisconsin. We were introducing a bill, the Community Protection of Sensitive Locations Act, to codify our current regulatory guidance that protects sensitive locations, like schools, churches, courthouses, and rising hopes. There's no way that this should be a magnet for ICE to come fulfill their particular mission. Not a culture of fear, but a solution. Justice Sonia Sotomayor said, quote, "We must not pretend that the countless people who are routinely targeted by police are isolated. They're the canaries in the coal mine, whose deaths, civil and literal, warn us that no one can breathe in this atmosphere. They're the ones who recognize that unlawful police stops corrode all our civil liberties, threaten all our lives. And until their voices matter too, our justice system will continue to be anything but." Look, I am just thrilled to introduce one of the most wonderful men on the planet, a man that I very much hope to be the next Vice President of the United States. Richmond City Council member, mayor, lieutenant governor, the most important job in office. The governor, and a very distinguished and capable vice presidential candidate for the Democratic Party. The winner of the first congressional spelling bee in 100 years. And the first person ever to give a complete speech on the Senate floor in Spanish. I give you our Senator, Tim Kaine.
Hey, thank you, and what a great group of colleagues. I see wonderful friends from local government, from state government, from federal government. I see civic activists. I see people of compassion. It is good to be together with all of you. A week after I came off the campaign trail and went back to the U.S. Senate, I came back in feeling bad, as you do when you go through something and you work real hard and it doesn't work out the way that you hoped. Although Virginia did fine, I'll give Virginia credit, but I got a letter from a little girl in Charlottesville that came in a couple of days after I got back. Her name's Penelope, and this was basically the letter. Dear Senator Kaine, I'm really sorry you're not vice president, but you have a very important job as a senator. Can you help stop my classmates from being deported? Fourth grader, Penelope. She said, I've done a drawing to try to give you some energy and encouragement. The drawing then came out in Crayola, a much younger, much thinner, much more hair version of me, with a cape on it and a T on the cape and the phrase, be the hero. The letter was about fear. The letter was about how afraid people are. And in the months since I got that letter, I've just seen this again and again and again. And that's why we're all here, and that's what my friend Congressman Beyer was talking about. The policies of this administration are policies to divide, and they're policies to create fear. A church, a hypothermia shelter. And when I read this story, I live in Richmond, when I read the story about the ice raid that happened here, I was like, are you kidding me? They came to a church as a target? A church that was a hypothermia shelter for people who were trying to stay warm at night? That's the target? That's what this administration wants to do? This has got to stop. The other night, during the address to Congress, the president perpetrated in a very false way the notion that, immigrants are more likely to commit crimes. We need to have a special focus on crimes committed by immigrants. Our immigrant communities usually commit fewer crimes than the norm. They're more victimized by crimes than the norm. Because of that, they need to feel comfortable interacting with our law enforcement professionals. If they do, it will make the entire community safer. But if you do things that make our immigrant communities afraid of law enforcement, then our entire communities become less safe. So I am just here to add my voice to the voice of all these great people to say we're going to stand up against this. The outpouring of support by the American public when the administration has taken harsh anti-immigrant steps, either the refugee orders or some of the things that are going around the country with ICE, the outpouring of support has been heartening. As frightening as it is to see what the administration is doing, the thing that I think is even more powerful is the degree to which communities are standing up against it. When there's a spontaneous rush of people, to Dulles Airport after the immigrant orders, or spontaneous outpouring of community support for people targeted in ICE raids like this, that's the face of this country. It is a much more accurate face of who we are than the kinds of policies that the president is doing. So we need to all stand together and be that nation of immigrants. And there's a way to deal with our safety concerns. I was part of, this is the naivete of a new senator, I was part of in June of 2013 the effort to pass comprehensive immigration reform. It set nearly 70 votes, Democrats and Republicans. It dealt with security. It dealt with the path to citizenship. It dealt with visa reforms. It dealt with Dreamers in a comprehensive way. And I was naive at the time. I knew if we passed it with a big bipartisan majority, I knew it would go to the House. I didn't expect the House would just do what we did, but I expected the House would do their own thing. And then we would sit down at a table and we would hammer something out and we would take comprehensive steps that would be good for the country and be in accord with our traditions. We can still do that. And maybe the one little bit of that speech the other night that I was just going to grab onto is, the notion that the president's saying, hey, you in Congress, you should do something. Let's just take that bipartisan bill that we did and start working on that. And Don and his colleagues, Don would be a leader in this. Let's just get enough House members who are willing to take that up, and we can really do a reform that's not about fear, but that's about law, that's about safety, that's about respect, that's about compassion, not about fear and division. And we can do it. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much. So we're joined by Senator Barbara Favola from Arlington. Thank you, Barbara. And we're now, I'm honored to introduce Michelle Lujan Grisham. Michelle is the chairman of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, which represents a bunch of people.
30 strong.
Yeah, and a huge percentage of the American population. From New Mexico, where she's represented for a number of years. And for those of you paying attention, there's a good chance she'll be the next governor of New Mexico. But in the meantime, she's the chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus.
Nice, thank you. I want to thank Rising Hope and the pastor. I want to thank this entire community and all the elected leaders who are here today. And thank you very much to my colleague, Congressman Beyer, because as you've already heard and as you already know, we are all collectively working diligently to respond to what is, in our opinion, immoral and completely uncharacteristic of the country that we all support and love. I mean, I think that's really important, right? We're all patriots here. We love this country. We want whatever occurs to be done fairly and justly and appropriately. And we've heard about all the areas where people should be free to participate irrespective of their status. And we haven't mentioned hospitals. So, we've got children, some of those children, right, with terminal diseases and issues, highest risk, whose families are just like the hypothermia, are faced with, if I go, the outcome is terrible, no one to do this health care and take care of my child, and I'm deported, or we all are. But if I don't go, I don't receive the health care that I know would potentially save my child, or at least make sure that my child isn't suffering. So I just can't believe that this is where we are headed. And the reality is that we are now seeing these widespread deportations with no due process. And this is something that should scare every American, every person residing, every family in our communities. By the time one of us who is working to react immediately, we don't know where you're detained, you don't see a lawyer, and the work of this incredible church and so many other community organizations is stifled purposely so that they can't create that safety net, that barrier, that work that really protects not just the immigrant families and communities, but all of us, right? These practices, these constitutional powers protect all of us. So everyone is at risk. And I really appreciate that the two colleagues that spoke before me, and thanks so much to Senator Kaine, that this fear effort, it's completely false. I'm going to give you another stat. This notion that somehow immigrant families are taking jobs and taking from the already scarce resources in our local communities and at the federal government. I mean, the fact is, they're contributing almost $12 billion to the economy. In my state, it's about $1.2 billion. We're one of the most economically challenged states in the country. Without that effort, without those entrepreneurs, we're in real trouble. And that's before we talk about farmers and long-term care and healthcare, all the areas that we're really making a difference in this country. And how about this stat? $15 billion to Social Security, which, by the way, in large part, doesn't go back, right? So it's, and I don't agree with this aspect, but just to put it in an economic, just sheer numbers perspective, it's a windfall for Social Security, which means it's supporting everybody else in that pipeline. All of these issues that have been pushed out by the Trump administration are only intended to get folks who would otherwise stand up and say something's wrong here, but to second guess their instincts to do the moral, to take the moral high road, to do what's right, to protect their constitutional freedoms. And lastly, I think about just yesterday, a young woman, Daniela Vargas, 22, right, is at a press conference who's talking about issues that make us safer, make us better, and leaves that press conference with her friend and is picked up by ICE and detained. You know what I think about, in addition to just how heinous that is? I think about a dreamer that I have a strong relationship with in my community, whose name I would love to tell you because I'm proud of her, but I won't. Because I don't know how to provide the right protections because I know that she's not safe. Or the hundreds of international students who ask me, are we safe? What do we do? And you know, they can't get. Student visas are a bit different, so I'm not going to get into the weeds, but just when you try to get, you know, current continuing permission, nothing happens, right? You're doing all the right stuff, but we don't respond, putting you at risk. And they said, can I go home? Can my family come? My mother is sick. And the only thing I can say is, call me before you go to the airport. Call me before you go to the border. And I can't promise, but I will be there. But what happens if I'm here and they're in Albuquerque, which is the issue that every single elected leader has right now in their community? I can't be everywhere at once. And even when we are, we can't promise protection, which is why we've waited 20 years. So even when you try to get right with the law, we have prohibited purposely. And they've got roots in these communities, and we did this. And now we have a responsibility to protect these communities, to protect these institutions, and to make sure that we do right by the law. It is time for comprehensive immigration reform. Thank you so much for the work that you do, and thank you for having me here today.
It's now my great pleasure to introduce a dear friend, the immediate past chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, but even more importantly now, the vice chair of the overall Democratic Caucus. So basically, she's the #2 Democrat in the land right now. But also, not to do too much, but the only woman who plays on the Congressional baseball team who was the most valuable player in 2015.
Oh, good.
Let me give you Linda Sánchez.
Thank you, Don. I want to thank my great colleague, Don, for bringing us together, and I want to thank everybody who is standing with me here today, because we are standing up and speaking out against the immigration actions that are taken by this administration. And this week, when I had the opportunity, actually had a few moments with the president, I said it straight to the president's face. I told him what he was doing with immigration was appalling, and it was wrong. And I'm here because this isn't an isolated issue. What happened here is not an isolated issue. When ICE goes after people who are seeking shelter from the cold in a church here in Virginia, that affects my district in California too. When ICE arrests a domestic or sexual abuse victim seeking the help of police in Texas, that affects immigrants in New Mexico. Democrats agree that removing violent criminals should be the priority of our removal process. But ICE agents lurking outside of churches or schools or hospitals does not make our communities safer. This administration cannot be trusted with any assurances. 2 weeks ago, I met with the acting ICE director, and he looked me in the eye and said that there was no change to the policy for sensitive locations like churches, hospitals, and schools. Well, we know that that was not true based on what happened just outside of these doors. When there are rogue agents getting cute with the rules, that's a problem for everyone. And ICE needs to crack down on those who are not following the policy and procedures that are set forth. And these agents, it's not surprising, they feel emboldened because our president uses fear of Muslims and fear of immigrants to drive his misguided policies. ICE's raids over the last few weeks are a heavy-handed weapon to intentionally incite fear. The apprehension of immigrants who pose no threats does not reflect the values of our great country. And these raids scare honest, hardworking people unnecessarily. We've heard that parents aren't sending their children to school because they're afraid they will be separated forever. People are not leaving their homes to go to work because they are afraid they may never return to their homes and families. Others who are in the process and waiting patiently and doing everything the right way but not hearing back from our government about their immigration claims, they're carrying their documents around with them everywhere because they're afraid that they might be stopped at any moment. And fear and distrust opens up an opportunity to really take advantage of a vulnerable community by scammers. But what's worse is that none of ICE's actions will actually help fix our broken immigration system. mass deportations and a $40 billion wall are not the answers to our broken immigration problem. Until Republicans and this administration come to that reality, Democrats will continue to step up and fight to protect immigrant communities. We'll work with our local partners to get the word out to immigrants that immigrants, even undocumented immigrants, they have rights in this country. We will support legal efforts to ensure that everybody receives due process. And we will keep up the pressure on this administration to focus on actually fixing a system that fails so many families. So Dawn, thank you again for inviting me into your community. It's important that everybody know that everybody here is standing up for what is right. And we'll continue to keep up the pressure on this administration to focus on actually helping families get ahead in this country instead of ripping them apart. And with that, I will turn it back over to my very able colleague. And again, thank you, Dawn.
Thank you, Madam Chair, very much. And our penultimate speaker is Nicholas Meritz, who comes to us from the Legal Aid Justice Center. Nicholas?
Thank you, Congressman Beyer. I'm here today as a member of the legal aid community and a member of the community of Northern Virginia. We're a statewide legal aid organization at the Legal Aid Justice Center, and we work directly with the affected communities all the time. And friends, this is a time of great fear and concern in the immigrant community. There's been a very large demand for people to learn about what their constitutional rights are against unreasonable searches and seizures. And also, LAJC has been putting on many community workshops to help people prepare for the worst. Parents want to know, my child is a U.S. citizen, I don't have documentation. What happens if my child comes home from school and I'm not there? So we've been putting on workshops to help people prepare powers of attorney, to help them prepare for what could be a really terrible humanitarian situation. Just one brief anecdote. I was at a community workshop in Annandale where we were helping people to prepare these powers of attorney and tell people about their rights. A concerned mother came up to me and said, my child's in 4th grade. She said that her music teacher gave the students in a class a worksheet that said, where are your parents from and why did they come to the United States? Luckily, we had another teacher from that same school at the meeting who was there as part of the Parent-Teacher Alliance, and told us that the music teacher wanted to use these questions in order to create a piece of music celebrating the diverse heritage of all the students in the classroom. But imagine the poor mother seeing something as innocent as a child's music worksheet that says, tell me about your family story, and said, is this information going to be given to the government? Are they going to take me away? So friends, that's the kind of climate that we're seeing here today. So I'm very grateful to Pastor Kaine. We heard about these raids and are having roots in the community when folks contacted us and let us know there's something really wrong going on here. We need to find out if any laws were violated, whether these arrests were legal, and we're still investigating. ICE has refused to give us the information of the names of the detained or an accounting of what exactly happened here. But we at Legal Aid Justice Center are working to get as close to the bottom of it as we can. With that, I wanted to introduce our very last speaker, who I don't know if the congressman wants to, or whether I should.
I'll let you do it.
Okay, thank you. We had hoped to have a representative from Dreamers Moms in action. Our original speaker couldn't make it, but our backup speaker, Maria Ruiz, was all set to come and speak with us. But then when she heard that this is Dreamers Moms in Action is an organization of parents and children of mixed status families who are really trying to navigate this time of fear and uncertainty. Maria was all set to speak at this rally, and then she saw a headline that said, Dreamer put into deportation proceedings 2 hours after giving a press conference. And she said, I don't know if I can do this. So we talked, and she ultimately decided that she'd be okay appearing by phone, but that she didn't want to be on camera. So if you don't mind, I'm going to give her a call right now, and hopefully she can tell you a little bit about what is going on in the community.
I'm wondering, while you're calling her, if I can just make an announcement.
Please.
Because this Saturday at 2 o'clock, we're going to have a vigil for the immigrant and the homeless here at Rising Hope in the parking lot. It's going to be a cold day, bring your coats. But we expect church people from all around Northern Virginia to show up and be here in the parking lot so the community can show support to those from immigrant backgrounds. We support you. We stand with you. We're for you. And so I just invite you to come back on Saturday. The music will start at 2:30 and the visual will start at 2 o'clock. Visual will start at 1:30. And let me get it. The music will start at 1:30. The visual will start at 2 o'clock. Thanks.
Bueno, María, ¿está? Ok, un momentito. Voy a ponerte en speakerphone. Ok, dale.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Soy una mujer inmigrante,
I am an immigrant woman,
madre de ciudadanos americanos.
mother of American citizen children.
El pledge a labios o la jura de bandera dice,
¿Puede repetirla, por favor?
el pledge o los labios o la jura de bandera dice que nosotros vivimos bajo una misma bandera, un mismo Dios, con libertad y justicia en esta nación, para todos.
¿Bajo la bandera de cuál? Es que...
The Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you very much.
Yes.
A phrase I'm not used to translating. It says that we live in a country with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
El día de hoy yo no me siento así,
But today, that's not how I am feeling.
ya que las nuevas directivas del presidente, del actual presidente, me están criminalizando.
Because these executive orders that have been issued by the president are criminalizing us.
Hoy no puedo salir libremente a hablar
Today, I don't feel like I can leave my home freely to speak
porque puedo ser detenida
because I might be detained and separated from my children.
Soy una mujer trabajadora,
I am a woman worker. I'm a working woman.
represento a la comunidad que cuida a tus hijos, construye tus casas, tus escuelas, tus hospitales, prepara tu comida, cuida a tus ancianos.
I represent the community that takes care of your children, your schools, your hospitals, that takes care of all American citizens.
En su discurso al Congreso, el presidente dijo que era su deber de velar por la paz y la tranquilidad espiritual de los niños estadounidenses.
In his speech to Congress, the president said that it was his duty to look out for the interests of the children and the people of the United States.
Hoy le pregunto, ¿qué pasa con la tranquilidad de nuestros hijos que tienen miedo de ir a la escuela porque cuando regresen a su casa piensan que sus padres no van a estar para recibirlos ya que han sido detenidos y puestos en deportación?
So today, I would ask him, where is the peace in our community when our children have fear that when they come home from school at the end of the day that their parents will not be there to receive them? What about the peace in the communities throughout this country?
Señor presidente, no todos somos criminales en este país.
Mr. President, you cannot make us criminals in this country.
Nuevas directivas de deportación nos están aterrorizando.
The executive orders ordering mass deportations are terrorizing our communities.
Denos una oportunidad para poder salir de las tumbas y seguir viviendo con dignidad y justicia y llevar el pan a nuestras casas.
Give us an opportunity to come out of the shadows into the light and form a regular part of American society and show you what we can do.
Si usted no quiere más ilegales, denos una reforma migratoria justa e integral.
If you don't want there to be illegal people in this country, then give us an immigration reform that is comprehensive and integral.
Señor presidente, nos negamos a vivir bajo el miedo y el terror que su administración está causando.
Mr. President, we decline to live under the environment of fear and anxiety which your administration is trying to cause us.
Señor presidente, hoy le digo, basta ya en nombre de esas madres que ven sufrir a sus hijos.
Mr. President, today I say, basta ya, enough is enough, in the name of mothers who are caring for their children, immigrant
Señor
mothers.
presidente, en nombre del Dios Todopoderoso,
Mr. President, in the name of all the all-powerful God,
que usted muchas veces menciona y dice que cree.
otra vez, por favor.
That you often say you believe in.
En nombre de Dios y dice que cree mucho en Dios.
That you often say you believe in.
Oh, in whom you often say you believe. Thank you, Senator. Oh, that's okay. El senador Tim Kaine acaba de corregir. Okay.
Yo te pido al presidente
I'm
que
like-
gobierne con sabiduría,
I'm going to ask the president that he governed with wisdom,
ya que todos los que vivimos en esta nación bajo esta bandera tenemos derechos.
because all of us who live in this country and under this flag, we have rights.
Que respete la dignidad de todo ser humano que vive en Estados Unidos.
May he respect the dignity of all human beings living in the United States.
Mr. Presidente, we the people make America great.
We are happy to take questions. When we have Linda Sánchez, Tim Kaine, and a wonder of
Senador
elected
Kaine, una
officials.
pregunta por favor en español. Dos preguntitas en una, por favor. Tengo entendido que de lo que pasó en febrero en esta iglesia, usted envió una carta a ICE pidiendo una explicación de lo que sucedió. ¿Ha recibido alguna respuesta?
No he recibido una respuesta todavía.
Y la segunda sería, ante el discurso del presidente Trump ante el Congreso, él dice que la reforma migratoria podría ser una realidad siempre y cuando haya un acuerdo de demócratas y republicanos. ¿Qué van a hacer de ahora en adelante? ¿Están listos para empezar a trabajar? ¿Van a dar los demócratas el
Siempre.
primer paso o los republicanos?
Estamos listos cada día. Desde junio de 2013 y usted por muchos años antes, ¿verdad?
15 años.
Ya,
sí.
15 años estamos tratando. La última reforma del sistema de inmigración, 1986, 31 años estamos esperando. En junio de 2013 en el Senado tuvimos casi 70 votos por una reforma integral, pero todavía estamos esperando. 4 años estamos esperando. Los líderes aquí, en el caso de representantes, ellos quieren reformar nuestro sistema, pero los republicanos que tienen la mayoría, no hay un voto en la Cámara, no hay un voto en el comité, estamos esperando. Pero el presidente hace 2 días dijo que es tiempo para los republicanos y demócratas a trabajar juntos para una reforma y podemos hacerlo. Debemos comenzar con el propuesto de ley en el Senado y podemos mejorar ese propuesto.
Senator Kaine, as you know, Governor McAuliffe met over the weekend with Secretary Kelly and then spoke to the president directly about this. And he was given assurance that they were only going to be targeted people who had committed crimes. What do you make of that assurance? Do you believe it?
Well, let's share
Yeah.
experiences here,
Yeah.
because we are hearing some words, but the words aren't necessarily matching up with what folks are seeing.
Exactly. When we met with the acting ICE director 2 weeks ago, we were told that the priorities for removal would be criminals. But under the Trump executive order, they've expanded the definition of what a criminal is. So it's not somebody who's been convicted of a crime. It can be somebody who's been accused of a crime, or even just somebody that they think is a threat. Now, what the threshold is for thinking someone is a threat, I don't know. That's not clear. But the fact of the matter is, given that they've expanded the universe of people who are considered quote-unquote criminal, and that includes people with traffic violations or who, minor infractions like trespassing, it could be any person who is in the country in an undocumented status, whether or not they're even DACA kids who are working and going to school and contributing to society and paying taxes and, helping in their communities. So I find it ironic that the president said that he, Congress should get, should work on immigration reform. I've been trying for 15 years that I've served in Congress. We've been trying to get comprehensive immigration reform passed. And we have had, in the Republican-controlled House, a complete lack of effort or willingness to even bring a bill to the floor for a vote. I believe there are enough Republicans that support comprehensive immigration reform in a similar format to the Senate bill, the most recent Senate bill that passed, that we could get it done. There is not the political will, and the only way we get that political will is from pressure from the bottom up. We cannot continue to see families ripped apart and think that that somehow makes this country greater, because it doesn't. We have to get to the work of fixing the problem, which is the broken immigration system. But unless and until Republicans are willing to sit down and work with us, we can't do it alone, because we simply don't hold the majority of votes in either legislative body.
To follow up on Julie's question with the specific incident that took place here, ICE is sort of disputing the numbers that have come out there. So there were 2 individuals that were specifically targeted, back to this idea that we're only targeting individuals with criminal records. Is there anybody who can comment on what happened here specifically last month based on ICE's account? And
We don't know what ICE's account is because
What I just said.
we've asked questions and we get no information. We've asked for meetings and they told us they would sit down with us and meet with the Hispanic caucus, and they haven't done it. And I will
I'm
just
just
say,
telling you what they're telling supporters.
I
that's
get
all.
that. I wish they would communicate with members of Congress, as obviously you have more information from their side than I do. But I will say this too. Under Trump's executive order, you can target a specific individual for removal who has a criminal background. But now under the Trump executive order, anybody who is in the vicinity can also be taken in and detained. That was not the case under Obama's administration. That is a huge departure, which means that you merely have to be in the wrong place at the wrong time to be selected for removal as well, whether or not you have any criminal background or even if you have a completely clean criminal background.
Reverend Kincannon, do you have insights into that, those particular arrests?
The one thing that I can tell you about what happened here on the morning of February 8th is that there are multiple witnesses that saw, and they all are reporting the same thing, and many of them have been on camera and talked to reporters already. They saw ICE officials surround 7 or 8 Latino men, put them up against the wall across the street, frisk them, handcuff them, interrogate them for 2.5 hours. And then put the majority of them in a paddy wagon and drive it away. Actually, a couple of those witnesses, I saw them here earlier today. I don't know if they are still here. When this is over, I'll find them if they might be willing to. Okay, all right. Okay, there's one. She was not one that talked to the group earlier, but I had no idea that she was one of those witnesses. But so there are multiple witnesses who saw what took place. I have no account for why the ICE account is different than what the witnesses have said.
Other questions?
Congresista, si nos podría decir en español lo que se habló en esa reunión que usted tuvo con el director de ICE, por favor.
Sí, claro. Hace como 2 semanas nos reunimos con el director de ICE y le preguntamos una serie de preguntas acerca de lo que ha pasado con los enredadas, is that how you say it? Enredadas. Y nos dijo básicamente que bajo los órdenes ejecutivos de Trump, que han expandido el universo de personas que se pueden deportar. Y cuando le hicimos la pregunta, pues, ¿qué tan grande es el orden o qué tan amplia es el orden? Nos dijo que casi todas las personas que están en este país en un estatus indocumentado están elegibles para ser deportadas. Y no importa si tienen un récord criminal o no, pueden ser personas que están trabajando o asistiendo a escuela, colegio, pagando taxes, contribuyendo a la comunidad, todos están elegibles para ser deportados.
I think this is a really important point too, and this is back to Julie's question on the clarity. So if they say one thing, that it's only folks with serious criminal records, and then there's a story that comes out that says a young lady goes to a press conference and says she's a dreamer, and then she's arrested an hour later, and her friends who were with her when she was arrested, their testimony in the news stories were the ICE agent stopped them in the car as they were leaving the press conference, and the ICE agent said, you know who we are, and you know why we're here. So they may say it's about criminals only, but then a story like that comes out and everybody's afraid. It was the same thing that happened with the refugee orders. The refugee orders came out and it applied to not just travelers, but permanent legal residents, green card holders, and special immigrant visa status. The White House on Saturday and Sunday said, okay, it doesn't apply to green card holders anymore. But when I talked to the DHS officials on Monday, they were back saying it does apply to green card holders, but we can give them a waiver. There's a high degree of confusion between the orders as being written, mostly being written by political types at the White House, not really even being written by the professionals. This is a political thing. It's not an immigration policy. This is a political thing. And they're writing orders that are confusing, that people are having a hard time understanding. And when there's confusion like that, that's what amplifies the fear, because people don't know, as our caller said, whether she can even go outside of her house and be safe.
Senador Kaine, una pregunta más en español, por favor, y espero no salirme del contexto. Con todo lo que está pasando en el país, ¿cuándo fue la última vez que habló con la secretaria Clinton y qué piensa ella de todo lo que está pasando?
No, ella está bien triste sobre eso. Yo hablé con ella casi 2 o 3 semanas y no hemos hablado sobre este asunto enredada aquí, pero ella está bien triste sobre eso, porque por muchos años Hillary Clinton era un gran apoyante de la reforma de nuestro sistema de inmigración y ella entiende que somos una nación de inmigrantes.
All of these folks will be available for individual interviews. If there's any more final questions for the team.
Senator Kaine, can I ask about the head of our justice system?
Sure.
Seems related.
Yep.
I'm a first-time activist. I live right near the gas station across the street in your district, sir. And I appreciate both of your work on behalf of immigration. And I'm a first-time leader of one of these groups called Indivisible. There's over 7,000 of us formed across the country in support of your agendas. And our concern is not only this issue, but it's also the Justice Department that's standing in the way of common sense work that you're trying to do. There's a lot of concern over the rot of democracy from the head down. I know your position in supporting asking for the resignation. Did I read that correctly?
Let me just tell you what my position is. So with respect to the news stories about Attorney General Sessions, I voted against him for a number of reasons, including his record on immigration, including his refusal to stand against torture when we were having anti-torture votes on the Armed Services Committee, including a civil rights background. But the stories this morning are very, very disturbing. I mean, let's put it in context. We've already had the resignation of the chief national security advisor to the Trump administration because he lied about his communications with the Russian government. That's already happened. Chief national security figure. And now the nation's chief law enforcement officer is being challenged for misleading his colleagues in the Judiciary Committee hearing about his contacts with the Russian government. What I've said are 3 things. 1, this demonstrates completely the need for a thorough and independent investigation into all the contacts between the Russian government and either the Trump campaign or now the Trump administration. 2nd, the Attorney General has demonstrated he can't be independent and objective in this. He's got to recuse himself. He called for Loretta Lynch to recuse herself from any examination of the Clinton issues because she met on an airplane for a few minutes with President Clinton last fall. She was open and above board about the meeting. Nobody claimed she misled anybody about it. He called for her to recuse herself. He's got to recuse himself. 3rd, the Judiciary Committee needs to haul him back before the committee, put him under oath, put the spotlights on, and dig into why he would tell them things that are wrong about his recent and very memorable contacts with the Russian government. After that hearing, we should make the decision about his status. If he's either unwilling to go and explain what to me seems to be a clear misleading of the committee members, or if he comes and his answers aren't satisfactory, then we should all ask him to resign. That's my thought about it. I know my colleagues probably have some thoughts.
Well, I think Senator Kaine's comments are incredibly thoughtful and appreciated. And I tossed and turned all night and woke up saying, I don't know how you can lie under oath twice and be the lead law enforcement official. And so today I asked for him to resign.
We totally have your back.
Okay, thank you all so much, very much for coming out and being part of this. It's terrific.
Hey, Julie, did you need anything else from him?
Yeah, of course.
Let's do a 30-second version of it because we got to hit the road. See if any. Yeah, good. See you. I want you to be here.